What did you decide to do?
I wanted to enter. I really the Army had the headquarters for the WACs in Des Moines, and I really wanted to become a WAC, but I knew that with my vision that I couldn't, and we knew that that was impossible. So my folks had a friend that was a representative in Congress, and so I even wrote to him and said, "There's something I can do. What can I do?" And he said, "Well, they were starting the Army hostesses that had equivalent ranks to second lieutenants." And he said, "But you're too young." I said, "Well, then I didn't give up." And I said, "Well, couldn't I get permission? I mean, couldn't I get special permission?" And so I did get special permission. And so they sent me to Camp Crowder, which later became a Fort Crowder, in Missouri, away from everything. Mm-hmm. And I was there for 3.5 years. In fact, I closed the camp we had service clubs. We had 4 service clubs, and I had charge of one, and then finally I was charge of all of them. And so I was mighty young, learning administration, which was priceless to me because I had charge of the snack bars and the entertainment, and of course again here was with performance that entered into my life because I had an opportunity to schedule things for GIs, and we had probably 70,000 GIs. And I even brought the famous Joe Louis, who was the world heavyweight champion at that time, and Sugar Ray Robinson, who was a lightweight, and I brought them to camp. And then I brought a lot of famous baseball players and so on for them. That's where I got started on that.
You have a lot of connections, and you've met a lot of famous people, and they all are reflected in your book as well, and they all think the world of you. How do you do that?
Well, I never paid anyone anything. I made up my mind that.
So that's the key, not paying people.
Well, actually, I decided that the money should. There wasn't money to do it. In most cases, there wasn't. Just like when I was at JU, I decided get celebrities who deserved it and believed in the same things that I believed in, and then also that they would donate their time. And one time I think I did pay transportation for one, but otherwise, and then it was important they would spend time with students and in the community if we possibly could. And so that's where the celebrities that we got would mix in the community and be with the students. And I said, you have to stay, in almost every case they would stay at least 3 days, sometimes 4, sometimes a week, actually.
When they came to Jacksonville?
Yeah, and then I'd come to get them back again. For example, probably the most often was the famous conductor of the Boston Pops. Arthur Fiedler. I had him 16 times.
Wow.
So the kids, they would sit beside him, or they got to know him. And then when he conducted the orchestras, they always overachieved with him. And then I was active with the symphony, Jacksonville Symphony, at the same time. So I'd arrange for him to come and play there. And when the symphony didn't get on the stage for a year, then I called, and because I was on the board and on the committee to help, and so I called Fiedler. Fiedler had scheduled a concert in San Francisco. And I told him, I said, we're desperate. We haven't had the symphony on the stage for a year, and I said, you're the only one that could really, because people loved him. He'd been here so many times, and so he actually changed his appointment in San Francisco. And he came, and we paid off the debt in one night, because of him. And we took him out to the Davis Ranch, and Mr. Davis would show him the alligators, and I think one of the funniest things he said was that one year we taught him how to call alligators. I know how to too. That's calling alligators, and they'll come across the lake to see you, and so. Of course, you don't really want them to come here. So, but we showed him how to do that, and so how to call them, and so then a year later he came back, and we went out to the ranch. And so I don't remember if it was J.E. Davis or my husband said, well, how did it work? Because Fiedler had said, I'm going to go home and try this on Mrs. Fiedler. And so, but he said, how did it work? Fiedler said, didn't work. Worked better with alligators.
Like I say, not everybody can pick up the phone, grab a phone book, and call Bob Hope or Jack Benny or any of these people. How is it that you come to where you were able to have those kinds of relationships with these huge, worldwide known celebrities? About
Although, you know, I actually knew President Ford at JU because he sent Jack, his son, there as a student. And that's where when I first knew him. But then, when he found out that I was a good friend of Bob's, and he was such a good friend of Bob's, and that's where that friendship developed among the three of us, because we did a lot of things together. And he really was a wonderful man. Well, both of them were wonderful men. Bob would called about once a week, and when Harry was living, Bob would forget that we had the 3-hour time difference, and so one night, and I'm sure that you all have heard this story, but one night we were already in bed sleeping, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and the telephone rang. And Harry answered the phone. Of course, here's this man at the other end asking for a friend. So I answered the phone. He turned it over to me. He gave the phone in bed. And Bob said, this is Bob. I said, Bob who? And of course, the rest of the years, he was Bob who. I mean, he couldn't get over it. I was sleepy, and I didn't recognize the voice on the phone. You know, so I said, Bob who? And I did go to his funeral. That was a small church, so they couldn't have too many people, but they invited us, and we even had seats. We were assigned seats. And at that, I looked around me, and here were all these people that I recognized by face, and President Ford was sitting in the very front row. And of course, it was just 3 years later after that President Ford died. And amazingly enough, I have a letter that was written by President Ford. They think it may be the last letter that he wrote. He wrote it on the 22nd of December. I didn't get it until Friday after Christmas. It was 3 days, I guess, 3 or 4 days. And it was a nice little note. We had already exchanged gifts, and we'd had Christmas cards. And but then I was surprised. Here came this little letter, and he was just saying, it was very, very sweet. He said, I hope you're going to have this great Christmas, and we're going to be with the family and at Palm Springs, and hope that you'll be with your family, and that you'll have. I mean, it's just a very sweet letter, but I have it right there. It's going to go to his museum, however.
You received the letter.
Oh, the letter was 4 days after he died.
You received the letter 4
Yeah.
days after he had died.
Right.
Wow.
Yes, because it was at the stack of mail with a lot of cards that were late, and right at the very top was his letter. And of course, the president signed. They don't use stamps. They sign the letter at the top, and so I was shocked when I got that. That was a real shock for me, because I couldn't believe it. You know, having already experienced the death by the news. But he I don't know if you know, you probably don't know, but he kicked off his library, the Ford Library campaign, here at Raymond Mason's, because they owned the that house, the DuPont house, and that was a beautiful evening too. It was just a small group of people, enough for the dining room and enough for the little porch. And they split us. Harry was with Bob, and Harry said, Bob said to me, "Where are you going?" And I said, well, I'm going to go sit with President Ford. And he said, huh, you left me. And in his cute wry way, oh, you left me.
Well, you also have celebrities from your students, among your students.
We do, and I've been very proud. I've really been very proud of the fact that in every area, as a matter of fact, in high positions in business as well, and in the military, we've had generals and admirals, and it's exciting, and particularly if I've had some association with them. You know, I'm so proud of them. As you watch them, you know, then you see how wonderful it is that they didn't come from Yale, they didn't come from Harvard, they came from Jacksonville University, which is very gratifying.